Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Ice 9, and of course we're playing as Deutschland. Bet you thought I was going to say Germany. No, Deutschland this time. Yes, and just before starting this, I got a few trades for supplies active, or requested them, for money. Armored car design, yay. Okay, we are now in 1937, so 1937 techs are the most optimized thing to do now. So, just because I don't keep everything in my head, well, we could do rocket engine, because we now, but that's way too soon. We now have the Pinamundi, and 38s aren't pushing it, you know, super far out. We do get a penalty. Just not as big a penalty enough, and they just don't warn you about it because it's not that big of a deal. It's a deal. It's enough of a deal that I want to optimize for 37, so long as I have a bunch of 37s that I want to do. I have, well, okay, 4-engine transport plane. We want those, so I'm going to build some of those. So, and it's 37 now, so we're going to do that now. I'm not exactly sure, well, throw some strength tech or something that we might not want to do, but yeah, a little bit more speed, reduce down there. Okay, the International Winter Sports Watch 1937, since we built the facilities at Garmisch Parken Correction Gaken Shun. You know. Germans. They're known for their really short words. Okay, for 1936 Winter Olympics that were a great success for the Reich, we could hold yearly winter sports games. This will cost us, but it could help improve international relations with many training for the games. It might help train mountain and winter sports troops. Should we hold the games? Okay, this is the historical poster for the 1937 games, and there's a pin from it. And if you notice, it's very similar to the Olympics, one of the Olympics posters. Okay, we could do that. Obviously, you can see the countries. I just literally went down the flag, and I believe that's all. At least all. They tend to put all the countries that have any sort of significant attendance in these, because they get smaller as time goes on. This goes until, I think, 1940? Winter 40? Maybe 41? I forget. And so, you know, some of the nations either disappear, like Czechoslovakia, and others are at war, in Austria, and others are at war with Germany, so it's the participants get fewer and fewer, so it helps our relations a teeny little bit. Cost us some supplies. We can afford that without, you know, on a whole. And like as I say, I do think training up for these kinds of events, as well as, you know, equipment improvements, happen over time. Okay, the Croatian question. Disappointed with the relations between Italians and the Ustasi organization. Pavlevich wants to increase his relations with Germany to fulfill his goal of an independent Croatian state. He asked for our support to write a survey for the German Ministry of Foreign Affairs called Die Kroatische Frage, the Croatian question. Interesting. Now you got to realize, and I don't, that guy there, that's an interesting. Hat looks army. Jacket looks NSKK. That is an interesting uniform. I'm not sure when that photo was taken. Could be January, because Hitler's wearing a cloak, which he rarely wears. I mean, I very rarely see that, so that could be. It's an interesting uniform, because that's like a driver's qualification pin. That's definitely an NSKK Eagle. I know it's a little blurry thing, but I can tell, trust me. and that's the collar style for like the NSKK coat. So it's not just like an army coat with a thing on it, but that hat looks like a German army officer's hat, and not unless that's an NSKK eagle up there. But I just that there, I don't know, not sure. Okay, sorry about that diversion. Mussolini had been at this time dealing with what is it, Malalovic. Whose name starts with A, and this guy starts with a P, otherwise it's about the same name. Been dealing with him, and he's sort of the sometimes dictator of Yugoslavia kind of thing. I know there's a king above him and whatever, and there's elections, but I'm still entirely unclear of this stuff. And he's sort of the fascist or fascist wannabe nationalist type leader of Yugoslavia, and he wants Yugoslavia, to be the leader of Yugoslavia. Where Pavlović is, the Ustashi Croatian nationalist element. Now, Croatians had been, shall we say, the clients of the Austrians. Meaning the Croatians were sort of the local foot soldiers, or the Austro-Hungarians maybe, but local foot soldiers in beating up, they were very heavy Catholic, beating up on the Orthodox Serbs and other groups in here. So they sort of been a lot of local light troops type things in the 18th century and such. So so that gives them a relations with Germans, and Hitler being an Austrian. Don't forget he was an Austrian. And remember, and also not just this kind of an Austrian, he was an Austro-Hungarian Austrian. When he was in Germany when World War I broke out, but he grew up and lived in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So I'm just sure. And Hitler, I don't know a lot about his childhood, and I think there's a fair amount of myth about his childhood that he was trying to create, plus other people trying to create myths about him. But he seemed like a person interested in stuff. He wasn't just some sort of, farmer, or in Hitler's case, an artist who only wanted to just be an artist and went to war and then woke up and realized the system was terrible and I have to change the system and didn't pay attention to it before. No, he was paying attention. There's various listings of some of his stuff that books and things and read and whatnot in Vienna. So he knew of the Austro-Hungarian Empire and knew of these relations. So he's well aware of that. And Mussolini is too. Mussolini is not an ignorant person. He is someone who knows about what's going on. So he knows that the Croatians could theoretically be an ally of Italy's, if you're looking at Italy as a Catholic country. But also remember, Mussolini really sort of kind of have his eyes out for the growing of the Roman Empire. And, I don't know his thinking. I really quite honestly hasn't read anything. But I can sort of think, well, you're dealing with a sort of wannabe, dictator here in Yugoslavia, but you sort of want some of the lands. And so you don't necessarily, I can see you might want to break up this country, but the people you're breaking up want their independence, not just from these guys, but want their independence generally, maybe. So sort of back and forth. So this is interesting. So we can provide the necessary funds. Costs us 10 money. Okay, that's good. That makes sense. Or we cannot, and improve our relations with Yugoslavia. I don't know why Albania and Bulgaria, but okay, we'll do that. Maybe it'll lead to interesting things. Just going faster than I want. I want to keep adjusting these. We'll slow that down by one. Okay, fire control system. Cruiser fire control system. We're going to switch that over to heavy anti-aircraft guns, which will help. Anything that has a heavy anti-aircraft gun on it. Panama has canceled our agreement. A little bit of money for some supplies. Okay, well, we're still doing more than we're considerably more, because I want to build up a big stock of this money again. 2,000 or 3,000 or more as a reserve. Okay, road networks have advanced. That's good. We'll stop there. I think we can find better 37 text at least. Push on now. No, we're also going to be looking at a lot of... Well, since we got this, we can get this now, so let's do that. Okay, now because we stopped, what's his name? Sorry, the guy from going to pick up the Nobel Prize in Norway, the decree of the Fuhrer and Chancellor of the foundation of the German National Prize for Arts and Sciences. So Hitler basically creates a German Nobel Prize, but it's basically open to Germans. It's not a world international prize that you give to the guy who makes the, super greatest scientific discovery or the, supermost humanitarian person or something. It's just open for German nationals. So to avoid embarrassing processes for all future, or for the future, I've ordered as of today, Foundation of German National Prize for Arts and Science. The national award will go annually to 3 deserving Germans. The amount of, 100,000 Reichsmarks, and the acceptance of the Nobel Prize is therefore prohibited from Germans for all future. So now we can do this or not. Obviously we're going to do this. I want you to be aware though that the Nobel Prize Committee is a political organization. It was, and I'm just talking off the top of my head from what I remember, so correct me if I'm wrong. And before you use any of this in any sort of real article or whatever, look it up. Make sure it's correct. It was founded by Alfred Nobel, the creator of dynamite, because dynamite, he quickly learns, or knows from the beginning, is going to use for military and war purposes. So he wants to, is why the Peace Prize is part of it, is that he wants to push the idea of peace. Now, yeah, you go, peace is a good thing, and yeah, I agree, peace is a good thing, and, but what about a good war prize, too? Now, what, you want to encourage war? Well, maybe we want to encourage excellence in war. A good short war, win and get out. Like, here's a good short war. The U.S. liberation of Kuwait, okay? We could go, well, Kuwait's been invaded, but we're going to go peace. Let Saddam Hussein keep Kuwait. No, we went to war. There is good, in my opinion, entirely justifiable, but good, justifiable reason to go to war to liberate Kuwait. There was a little bit of mission creep to sort of kind of help the Southern Arabs, they thought, to break away from Saddam Hussein, and help the Kurds to break away from Saddam Hussein, and that regime's about ready to collapse. Didn't. That's, again, a lot of wishful thinking on my opinion, on two ends, though Bush is connected with, Bush the senior is connected with both of them. One with our sort of State Department type and CIA type mentality that people are basically good and want generally freedom and apple pie and Western values. They're wrong. And that kind of stuff. And again, sort of the American mindset of the similar thing too, that Bush had of, ideologically, that just give it enough reason, enough collapse, they're going to get rid of Saddam Hussein. No, because this isn't a stable country. It needs a strong man to hold it together. They were going to stick with Saddam Hussein over what chaos may come. And so the help, pushing for these guys to rebel especially once the war was won, was a stupid thing, because it gets them to do things and then you don't support them and they get messed up and it causes future problems. But like I say, going in, Schwarzkopf should get the Nobel War Prize, because he went in, basically mostly killed soldiers. You know, there's air campaigns to hit the bunkers along here, and the road of death was mostly Iraqi occupying troops fleeing with stolen goods, or not stolen goods, but just fleeing, and we were killing them rapidly without butchering or destroying, butchering civilians or destroying cities. We liberated Kuwait. Again, it's not pain-free. You know, it does kill people, and not just soldiers, but we liberated Kuwait. So war can be a good thing. Now, obviously, it was a war that invaded, but that's the point, is wars are going to happen. And to always push for peace, always push for a peaceful settlement. Now, of course, if someone go and visit Saddam Hussein and say, hey, I'd prefer if you leave Kuwait, and he were to go, oh, you really would want me to go? Okay, well, I'll go. I just sort of thought it was a cool Saturday afternoon and we'd take it over, but if you object, well, I'll leave. If you think that's the way the world works, and I think a lot of nut jobs on the peace movement do, and of course there's also a lot of not nut jobs in the peace movement, which are really just using peace parties as and anti-war movements as a way to help our enemies. Or a way to stymie certain, if it's not to help our enemies, a way to stymie certain policy goals of the U.S. I think the whole Kim Il-sung's sister, the Minister of Propaganda, the Joseph Goebbels, not necessarily in quality of propaganda, if you've seen North Korean propaganda, but the sort of role of hers is Joseph Goebbels' role for North Korea. Oh, she's the star of the show, and look at Mike Pence is just, not doing so good. What? Because you hate Trump and Mike Pence so much, you're going to praise a Goebbels-like figure of a totalitarian regime, and probably the most totalitarian regime currently on the planet? God, you people, you media nuts, and anyone who's buying that is really bad. I mean, go ahead and hate Trump and hate what Trump does, but to play her up as some sort of I don't know what, but it's just god awful. I mean, that just rotten hell for all of you anchors that sat on television, your local anchors, national anchors on American media, and talking heads that played up that angle and how she was winning some sort of propaganda war, and all that kind of stuff, when you should be treating her as if she's the representative of Hitler and not Trump and Pence. Hate them if you will. Again, I'm not saying you should love Trump and Pence, but to equate that, and I'd be saying the same thing if you were saying that about Obama or Joe Biden or somebody, Democrat going into the Olympics, and if a bunch of Republicans or Republican media was, with small amounts, Fox News, and that's about it, and talk show guys, but on the radio, but that's about it for Republican media. But if you were doing that on I would be equally pissed at you. I didn't like Obama and his policies, but to somehow cheer that over them, oh God, that's just god awful. So yeah, there's good wars, necessary wars, and to always. So sometimes, like I say, sometimes people just either hate the current whatever regime, and it could be a regime in Austria. I'm just picking it because it's in front of me right now, that's going to war somewhere else, and you just want to mess with it. So the goal is, so you want to promote peace. Well, really, you're supporting, I don't know, Hungary. If it's a war of Austria against Hungary, you're really rooting for Hungary, and so you want to promote peace. Or maybe you just hate the current regime of Austria, so you want the war to fail. and so your party comes in power, so you support the peace groups. But that's who's, so that's the Nobel Peace Prize. And yeah, no, you don't give it to people like Hitler who are warmongers, but there are, so it does. So the Nobel Peace Prize has a political agenda. Now, yes, their political agenda is light years ahead or better or whatever than the Nazis. I'm not trying to equate that, but it does have a political dimension. So I understand why Hitler and the Nazis, it wasn't just, because they didn't like the group or they hated the guy. They realized it was a political thing. So yeah, so we'll lose some dissent, which is good, and we'll gain 1 point of popularity for 5 money. And we have a decision to make. Road networks, level 2, yes. Yes, please. And which, of course, gives us just slightly better organization regain rate. But still, it's nice. And I think a lot of people just don't know, because I don't want to, and I would say a lot of even just teachers just don't know. They just think that the Nobel, we're going to say no to this one. The Nobel Committee was formed and didn't necessarily have an agenda and was just some sort of altruistic society, and that it's just great. And so people don't realize the sort of politics behind the founding and behind who they pick as members and all of that kind of thing. The committees, they all have an agenda, a particular agenda, not just everybody who shows up has their own agenda. No, they're picking the people that have their agendas. Flying boat prototypes. And no, I don't hate the Peace Prize Committee. I don't dislike people who get the win the award or anything like that. You got to be aware. Oh, and if you think it doesn't, who got the Peace Prize within the first year, or was it just months after winning the U.S. election? Obama, who then promptly goes around droning all kinds of countries, sets up with Hillary Clinton a war to overthrow Gaddafi. Yeah, Gaddafi was an evil guy, but they set up the war to overthrow him, started a war there, and things like that. So, if you really loved Obama and you did it after his 4 years or after his 8 years or something like that you had a proven record, I go, oh, okay, yeah, you watched him and you really think he made the world more peaceful, fine, you give it out. But no, you give it out to him just because he's not Bush. Not because he did anything, but because he's not Bush. And that just, shows their agenda. Always got to be aware of whose agenda. Yeah, I see that. Let's go Huffduff. What's the organization's agenda? What's going on there? The Luna Work was a large plant which produced synthetic gasoline through coal liquefaction. It used lignite as the raw material should we build this hydrator work. Because when I looked into this, there's the lignite process, and I forget the other one. 2 different processes that use 2 different types of coal, primarily at least, to create liquefaction, to turn it into an oil-based, because basically, in essence, to whatever degree, coal is just dried out of oil in large part. I'm sure somebody could prove in detail. Like I say, well, there's 2 different types of coal that they use, but there's even more different subtypes or different things in different regions. Sort of the different impurities and whatnot. But it's that kind of thing, so that's what they're doing. And Germany pursues both paths. Okay, yep, 2,500, yep, big. So we, in Leipzig, this is where that is, we'll get one more rare, one more crude, rares extraction, and oil rig, which is basically a rare, oil extraction. And lose 2 energy, basically we're reducing down. We're using the coal as for oil instead of the coal for energy. So okay, we are now 314. We're just in February. We can go up to 450 in 1937 for our maxes without getting a penalty. Well, you can go over that, but you get a penalty. In 1937, IG Farben, Reine Osag, and Deutsch Amerikanische Petroleumgeschaft founded the Hydrowerk Polletz AG synthetic materials plant. By 1943, this facility produced 15% of Germany's synthetic fuels should we build it. So here, again, this is in Sutton. We get rare materials and crude and extraction from their synthetics. And yes, we're going to do that. Oh, and we've also pushed over on a technology. Oh, small caliber anti-tank gun. Good, which frees up now medium tank design, so we want to do that for sure. A lot of this, well, back in the 19th century, including a lot of the early stuff, if I remember correctly, in Germany, they do a lot of synthetic materials development. And a lot of the early stuff, if I remember correctly, like I say, was dye related, creating new dyes, but also working with, if I also remember correctly, fertilizers. And so Germany's been doing this stuff, but they really, post-World War I, look at the idea of doing the synthetic oil, because they know that they've got lots of resources of coal. They don't have oil sources in large numbers. There are some oil wells and some oil that they find in coming up, but it's not in large numbers. And they realize in fighting World War I that it's not going to be a coal-based energy system of coal for running factories. Yes, that can still happen. Coal for running trains. Yes, that still is going to happen. But it isn't going to be primarily a train next kind of thing. It's going to be aircraft, tanks, trucks or tractors to tow artillery, trucks to move troops and supplies around the battlefield. And so it's really needing to be an oil-based system. And they know, they believe, and again, there is exploration, and it's still going on at this time, exploration for new oil sources, but they really have yet to find any large oil deposits in Germany. But they knew they had coal, so they started in the 20s, and I'm not sure what company when and whatnot, but they started in the 20s looking for synthetic or coal to oil. We give them money for crude. Okay, 46. Okay. So they start well before the Nazis and well before the idea of, oh, we're going to be fighting World War II, round 2 of the World Wars. Because a lot of this is starting under more, not necessarily under conservative or warmongering type German militarists. Some of this stuff is happening under socialist types as well. Okay, Ruhrchemik AG, the Ruhr Benzene AG. 1940. Here's some of the stuff. 1934 undertook to construct a plant of 100 tons of oil a year so yeah, again, I need a good editor for these later stuff. Part of this is coming through Google Translate, and I'm quickly doing stuff. It was designed to produce motor fuel and lubrication oil. The factory specialized in the chrysalis based on metals, nickel, copper, cobalt, using a method called the Torpich synthetic process. See, this is the other synthetic process. Again, I don't remember these things even if I make the events. These factories called the Fischer Torpich align, and in addition to the ones mentioned here, there was also a plant called the Gewerkschaft Victor and the Gewerkschaft Ripien. Okay, so we can this is already pre-existing. You have the factory. There is some stuff there, I believe. Dusseldorf. Does Dusseldorf here? No, that's Cologne. I should get these right. It's up here. There we go. Dusseldorf. Knew it was in this area. So you already have some coal mine, steel refinery. Okay, we really don't have. Maybe you should have more. Starting, I don't know, but this is already going, but it's only 100 tons of oil a year. That's not a lot. I mean, it's not going to feed. It's more of a in 34, more of a an experimental factory. That, to my knowledge, they were producing it, and using it as motor fuel and lubricating oil sold commercially. But it wasn't like, oh, well, we're making money on it. It's, oh, well, it's costing us, 50 cents a gallon, and we're selling it for $5 or for 5 cents a gallon. Just to do it, just to get the experiment, just to get the how to do this on a, more than just in a, a small laboratory, once off kind of experiment, but getting this going to the plant. This is just a generic big plant thingy that I use the image from this period. I think it's on one of these, but not necessarily this plant. But this is all part of the bra bag thing that you earlier on had a little thing about. Okay, so, but this gives you a chance to expand it from this sort of, I don't know why there's a, I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be just 100 tons. Maybe it's supposed to be 1,000. I don't know if I got that wrong, but I shouldn't have the comma if it's just 100 tons. I don't know if that's a typo or what, but we'll get a rares material and a crude, and rares extraction and oil rig. If we lose some energy, for no need. So we're going to expand this factory. Okay. Exploratory oil drilling. These four companies, this company up here, this company here, and this company here, and this company here. The Reich has very limited known oil reserves, most of which are in northwest Germany. In the coming war, we need access to resources. The lack of resources was one of the main reasons for Germany's loss in the last war. Yeah, Germany didn't so much lose on the battlefield. It lost on the, sort of production and resource front. If you look at the number of, what are they, the AV7, the tanks, they were, a couple hundred, where there's thousands of little FT-17s. The Western Allies were producing so much more than Germany, but also food. Germany was starving. They were able to feed their armies, but Germany at home was starving. Germany was beaten in a strategic sense, because you can cut it off from supplies, you defeat them, but they didn't. They weren't, their armies weren't crushed on the battlefield like they were in World War II. So it wasn't the stab in the back. It was Germany economically was defeated, but not so much defeated on the battlefield. There was defeats, and it was quite clear that once America got in the war and was really pushing, and America was supplying the Western Allies with lots of supplies as well, that there was no way, they couldn't just do one more push and win, and the Allies were going to be able to keep doing offensives, and we're going to eventually win. That was clear to the German high command. So they were not going to win the military battle. Even, wasn't like, well, if we could only held out for another, 6 months or another year, we would have turned the tide. No, they were going to lose. And unlike the, the Hitler regime, the German monarchist militarist whatever regime realized it was lost and, did the armistice and then surrendered through the Versailles Treaty. They realized that's what was going to happen, and they surrendered. And it was because of lack of, if you add in food, strategic resources is why they lost. Because had they had more strategic resources, and they might have been able to win before the America got in. Once America got in, again, you get crushed. If not quickly, eventually. Okay, in 1933, the government started exploratory drilling to expand our domestic oil reserves. Some wish to put our development resources into synthetic oil. This would not limit our ability to develop synthetic oil, but uses some of our resources. Should we continue looking for oil or rely upon oil imports, as in from Romania? We can start drilling, exploratory wells or not. We're going to pick no, because they didn't find any. There were no, and they still to this day. I think with fracking, they might be able to reopen. I don't know if they've tried some of these old oil fields with some of the modern day fracking ability, but no one's found any new major deposits that they didn't already know about at this time. They were still pumping oil out of those deposits, but no new drilling. So no. But they did decide to do more exploratory drilling. They were doing that. That's why those 4 companies, they just found their logos and put them there and whatever. But they were doing this. Okay, German is a part of Tanganyika. Deutsches Pathfinder von Südwest Africa. These are German, not Afrikaans, but German remainders, and this is where the main group of German remainders after World War I stayed, and there's still communities to this day left over from these people, from Germans from World War I. We can support them or not. Now this we will do. This is one of the biggest rally I've seen any photographs from. So, I got some Pathfinder boys, lots of audiences. I think in this rally, if you include all the attendees, which would be the parents of the kids and some of the sort of whatnot, I think it's in the hundreds, if you include all of their parents and everybody else that was supporting them. Not in their thousands. And now, if you realize how big, this is a huge country, and it's a little bit distorted from here, but Southwest Africa is huge. So you might get, this is Wavis Bay here, it's sort of the old sort of English colony, but also some of the main stuff here. You very well may be able to get 100 together here, but then there may be thousands, that just can't attend that are in greater Southwest Africa. So I don't quite know the numbers on the Pathfinders, and I've never seen anything published like, saw the numbers. There was, 500 or 5,000 of the Pathfinder, as in their version of the Hitler Youth. But I would say its membership is somewhere in the hundreds total, at least. But beyond that, I don't know. Naval bomber prototypes, yay! Okay, so that's grayed out. Yes. Yeah. Let's come over here and do depth charges. So once we pick them up on our sonars, we can depth charge the submarines. Okay, short barrel HE gun has advanced. And, oh no, that's down here. Got to learn these new positions. Next one is in 40, and it allows us to do infantry support tanks, which we're not going to do. Tanks, but no tanks. We're not going to improve those. We'll do assault guns and some of the other stuff. The Germany, well, what's an infantry support tank? Could be a big heavy thing. That's normally what I think most of these really sort of do. But the French sort of also look them as small, light little things. The R-35 and the H-35, as well as the old FT-17 as infantry support tanks. They were too slow to be cavalry or rapid support or rapid tanks, but they were slow and light or medium levels of armor for that. And the British, there's the I tanks, the Matildas and such. They were generally heavy, but also slow. Germany did go down this road a bit. That's what the new Art or whatever, the big tanks with multiple turrets on there. They're the heavies. You know, their main turret had a 37mm gun and a 75mm gun. Two different companies built them. They each, I think, built 3 of them as, you know, prototype models. Oh, and they also had a machine gun in the turret. One company had the 37mm gun on top and the 75mm gun below it, all in the same mount, you know, all shot at the same location, though they had different bullet trajectories. Not that convenient. But pointing it, which made the turret taller. The other company, I forget which one was which. The other company had them side by side. That's the one you find in War Thunder videos. I'll be making some videos driving that tank around. And then it has 2 auxiliary, basically Panzer 1 turrets. 2 of them all added onto this thing. So this is a big, huge thing, heavy tank. Moderately okay design, but the big problem is for a heavy tank, it has no better armor than a you know, Panzer II or something. It doesn't have great armor. But as an if your enemy is shooting at you with lightweight stuff, and that's all they have, it's sort of a big beast to move up and support your infantry. And you know, if there's an enemy armor, you shoot them with the 37mm gun. If there's an enemy, you know, well dug in position, whether it's sandbags and wood but well dug in, or concrete, you shoot it with the 75mm gun. And all the rest of the infantry running around and the guys lining the edges of the trenches, you shoot them with the machine guns, and it works. But there's other options much better than these big behemoths. There's things that work better. There's work, and then there's things that work better. From my knowledge, and that's what the Germans, they built, I think, total of 6 of these things, 3 of each type. They used 3 of the, I think it's the side-by-side turret type, as part of the, I think, mostly aftermath of the invasion of Norway as a propaganda things. Don't know what happened to those tanks. That's, medium velocity gun. That's what we want to do. We don't even have to think about that one. No need. Don't know what happened to them. I've never seen photos of them in late war camouflage or crosses or whatever. So I don't know if they stayed in Norway but just were never photographed, or whether they're shipped back to Germany, but I've yet to see them, you know, photographed or used as some sort of, you know, like a wrecked vehicle used as part of the last-ditch defense of Berlin. I suspect, because I just don't know, that and because I haven't seen any of that stuff, that they were taken back and eventually scrapped, you know, used for parts, and the rest melted down. Okay, artillery barrel and ammunition advanced. Great. The 39 is too far ahead. That's a good choice, but let's see about some other 37. Yeah, let's. Oh, what did I see here? Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's continue to go through these here as we get more free and less. Okay. Bevo. That's a common tag that you see on various Nazi uniform types. They were contract maker of cloth insignia for all kinds of stuff, including the army. That's an army, or yeah, pretty sure that's an army eagle. That looks, I think, a naval eagle. That's a Luftwaffe eagle. I think that's a Luftschutz symbol, but also party type stuff, you know. But so we can do that. We'll get our industrial capacity increase. There's a picture of the factory. It's pretty big, or not, but it's going to cost us a little bit. And but it's, you notice the supplies, yes, but it's till February 24th, so 10 days minus 6%. So it's pretty heavy penalty. 6% of this, you know, going to be, what, 18 ICs or something? So, yep, it's going to cost us for 10 days. Not long, but it's a heavy impact. So I sort of, you know, because obviously depends on how many ICs you build. If for some reason you've been able to, you know, take Austria before now, you don't know how big that impact is going to be when you're modding it. So you just have several generic sort of things, and you go, oh, okay, yeah, 10 days, 6%, it's big and heavy, but then you sort of have a vague idea because you play the game of what that's going to be. So I go, that for a one-off single IC, you go, yeah, it's worth it. It's both, you know, it's worth the cost of doing it, but it's also a reasonable price to pay. Okay, I'm not even going to try to do that. The National Settlement Agreement of February 18, 1937. And I talked to George about this, and he gave me the exact check, so I copied and pasted in there. But he identified it as the National Settlement Agreement of February 18, 1937. And I totally believe him. But to me, as an American, we would go, oh, that's the Mount Vernon settlement. We give it a name, you know, maybe of that, but we'd have a, you know, person's name attached to it, a place name attached to it, or something more creative. It just, that's how with the way the U.S. and I think, and we'd have a, you know, a more than just national settlement agreement. Not the, like, it's not the only national settlement agreement like in history. It's not like some super great one, but it's the one of February 18th, 1937. You know, just I was trying to get, like, is there like a cool sort of name for it? Not really. That's what it is in Czech, and that's what, okay. Our diplomatic service reports that Czechoslovakian government adopted a national settlement agreement in which the government is committed to improving the economic, cultural, and social situations in the border region. If this is allowed to stand, then the SDP may lose support. Okay, so this is their sort of, as you can see, this is a map of the Sudetenland. This is sort of the Czech response to the Sudeten Germans. Oh, things aren't good for you? You don't like how things are going? Okay. Well, we will, you know, try to improve the economic situation, try to improve the cultural and social situation. And this may be, I don't know, maybe geared towards everybody, but definitely geared towards a lot of Americans. There were lots of lots of rural homes, not just in Czechoslovakia, but in Germany, but, you know, in all this region, that had no indoor plumbing. I mean, well, maybe they had a pump handle well, but even that, a lot of the water was outside in a well. That you brought the water in the 1930s. Now, I'm not saying in every city and every town, but a lot of rural people were still, you know, had an outhouse outside and no plumbing in their homes still at this time in the world. The farms, you know, what had been peasants that you may still sort of consider them peasants or whatever, so that you can honestly, you know, now also by this time a lot of cities had water, but you can look at sort of the plumbing situation. I don't know if any of you are watching or have watched the series about young Queen Victoria that's been on I forget. I get it via the internet. One of the British channels. I'm saying the BBC, but I don't know. They've done, I think, two series so far on it, and they talk about, and this is in the, you know, 1860s or something. London basically has no real centralized waterworks. You know, the idea that you can turn on a tap and water comes out, and you have plumbing that's going to efficiently move out there. And they talk about putting the first indoor toilet into this is like maybe 1850s. Yeah, the American Civil War hasn't happened yet, so let's go 1850s for this, because I don't think it had. And thing. So 1850s, they're putting the first indoor plumbing into what's the palace in current big palace? I want to say St. James, but it's not St. James. It's earlier one. Buckingham Palace. Okay, so we're starting to get in the 1850s for the Queen and King of England and their staff. So by the turn of the century, you are getting a lot of various cities that are getting more and more, indoor plumbing. And I talked earlier about how there was no indoor plumbing in some of these major tenants in the slum districts in Berlin. No indoor plumbing at all, or no real ones. Like there was the idea that there may be a city water tap somewhere that you could turn and get water on, but carry it to your apartment. In a bucket, in a pail, in a pitcher, in a thing. But there wasn't like the idea of a sink with water coming out of turn the taps on in the 1930s in Berlin for the poor people. Obviously, there was city water, and the rich people had it, and they had electricity and all these other things. But there was not necessarily, and that's just plumbing. There was many areas that didn't have electricity. So you have the idea of Prague being a well-developed city, and it was a well-developed city at this time, that did have a lot of indoor plumbing and electricity. But then you get these resentful Germans that are resenting living in what they see as a Czech majority country. I don't know if it quite was, if you add in all the Slovaks and other peoples, but they're at least the dominant political force. And so they're sort of pissed off about that, and then they're living in sort of underdeveloped areas, because if you don't have a local power plant, you can't put in you can't put in electricity in a practical sense. It's too expensive to put generators in everybody's home. And it's expensive. On an isolated building, it's sort of expensive to put in a water system. And in isolated little villages, if you don't have a village water supply source, you can't just put it in your own home. It's not just like hooking it up to the thing out on the street. So that's an attempt by the Czechs to go, oh, okay, well, we'll make your life better. We'll do this. Now, obviously, this is in February 37. In 38, the Sudetens leave it. So they, in a year, you can't fix all these problems. But it's an attempt at looking like they're doing something. And I don't know how much they actually got done, as opposed to just look like they were doing something. Okay, aircraft carrier engines have advanced. So we're going to stop that, and we're going to go to... No. Let's do carrier hangar first. Rather have that done. Okay, Hitler, one of the first things he did in 33, once he got into power, because it was just after it went to the big auto show, he was a big motoring enthusiast, even though he never learned how to drive, but he always wanted to be up front. So on all of his cars, he rode next to the driver up front, and all the extra sort of limo space in back, which a lot of his cars had, he'd have 2 to 4 sort of staff members, security types riding in there. So it wasn't, he didn't have big long luxury cars to ride in the back and look plush. He had them to have all of his extra staff around. But he really loved cars. Thought they were really super cool. And even before he comes to power, so it isn't like, oh, well, you're in power, so we're not going to let you drive yourself. Even before he's in power, there's a lot of going back and forth with Mercedes. There's, reports or, things that he was buying a Mercedes car. This is like, I don't know, in 1926 or something, 1928 or whatever, that he's buying these cars for himself. And, special ordering some stuff that he obviously could have been taught by one of his drivers how to drive, but he just, for some reason, and I don't know what it was, to my knowledge, he never tried to get behind that wheel. Just sort of an oddity of Hitler. Now, I wouldn't find it such an oddity if he rode in the car but had no real interest in cars. It was just like, oh, well, I need to get to this other place, and they're going to drive me, That'd be one thing. But he had a real sort of fascination with cars. You can often see him photographed. But it wasn't just like, oh, I'm the dictator. Where am I supposed to go today, and look at something and be photographed looking at it? No, he really had an interest in cars and really wanted to find out, have the car manufacturer guy, and explain to them how the transmission works and how they're improving things, and he was really interested in knowing that stuff. It wasn't just some, sort of got to do it to show off. He was really interested. And so for a person to be so interested in it, to not do it. And yeah, I understand you can be so interested in race car driving, and even if you have the money to do it, go, I'm not good enough to drive around super fast. But he didn't even, like, drive on, easy roads somewhere. There's one thing to, like, drive on the Autobahn at 60 or 80 miles an hour, which he'd love to be driven around at that kind of speed. But he didn't even try to, drive around Berchtesgaden or something on his own slowly once in a while. Just didn't. And I find that to be an oddity for someone who's so into it. That's sort of like, I guess, I was thinking, it's like, I have a big, huge gun collection. Oh, and you live right next to a gun range. Well, no, I've never shot any of my guns. And they're not, well, are the guns like some super ancient pressures? No, they're the guns I buy, modern guns I buy at the gun shop. But I never go shoot them. Really? Oh, I just think the mechanics of gun manufacturers are really cool. Yeah, but you've never shot a gun? And you live next to a gun range? I mean, that's sort of how I'm taking this. Maybe you guys would see it differently. And no, I'm not a good enough shot to be Olympic pistol or rifle champion, or have a gun of, because those are custom built kind of things. Have a gun of that kind of quality. But it just, you've never shot your guns? To me, that's just weird. Now, if you live in a country like modern day Germany or something, who you don't get a chance to own guns and you don't get a chance to shoot guns and you're really into it, I get that, because the law keeps you from doing it. Or if you just don't have the money for it, I get that. But if you have them and you don't, that just seems odd to me. Light bomber prototypes. And just something that okay, there's a lot of quack, and I put it as quack, and I know some of it comes from people who know Hitler well. One of them was an American, Pitsy, something like that, I think. There was an American of German descent who was a big friend of Hitler rising to power. But he's already back in America well before the war starts. And the U.S. government interviews him, as well as what's his name? The guy who one of the Strasser brothers, the one that survived and got out. Also gets interviewed, and there's a lot of salacious stuff in some of these reports about him that have been in some of the documentaries I watch. I'm not saying they're not true, what they say, but I don't trust what they say, the salacious stuff, what they say at all that is true. The reason I don't trust it is because I think the people were in the position to be, I was Hitler's best buddy. Now they're at war with Hitler. Are they going to lock me up or shoot me or something like that? I better tell them what I know. Oh, I better make it sound good. And what do they want to hear? Oh, I want to tell them that Hitler's crazy. Hitler's a nut job. Hitler does. And that's sort of the kind of way, the reason I don't trust it is because it's somebody talking after they're in America. So some of these psychoanalysis stuff based on some of the stuff that the U.S. government was doing just before and during the war, I don't trust, because it's based on people doing it. So there's weird psychoanalysis of Hitler, I'm sure, but then there's other stuff, and so, but I just take that as some sort of weird thing. Okay, close air support prototypes has gotten up and grayed out, and range finding equipment for artillery is not grayed out, but we're pushing too far ahead on it. Okay, so let's come down to here. Okay, defensiveness, we'll go with the historic one. Toughness one, we'll do that. And we've got a lot of 37 technologies here and some here. Let's do fighter pilot training. We'll get those guys getting good. I don't know if it stems from Hitler's blindness. I don't know if Hitler's early elements of Hitler's blindness, I think, is a reaction to the gas attack. But that, eyes swell up and whatnot that he gets. And again, I don't know. I probably read some details of it way back when, but it's been, 30 years or more. And I think the later elements may have been hysterical blindness. And there's a lot of cases of people who, they're pretty damn sure, leading out of World War I, that their eyes work perfectly well, in a functional sense, but their brains, for one reason or another, truly shut down inputs from it, and as a reaction to things. And I think the sort of extended blindness that Hitler sort of continued to suffer, because his eyesight comes back, and I gather it was good. I don't know people saying that Hitler couldn't see things. I don't remember that he may have needed glasses to read. I don't know, but meaning he wasn't wasn't like no one. I've never got a comment that he had trouble recognizing people's faces at 30 feet. So I don't think it's the idea that because his eyes come and seem to function fine. I don't think it's a afraid of again, I say I don't think. It's afraid of not being able to see well enough to drive. It may be that situation, but I don't think it's that from his blindness. But it may be having some sort of element. But to the best of my understanding, his eyesight comes back basically fully as it was before the gas attack. So I take it as some sort of temporary reaction element to the chemical weapon. And then the reason it lasts so long, and correct me if you guys know better on detail on some of this stuff, but it sort of lasts longer than the doctors sort of think, lasts long enough the doctors think it's permanent, but then it goes away. So I take that element as being hysterical blindness, of sort of a mental situation as opposed to a physical situation. He's just so in fear of losing his eyesight, and and as a person, if I was blinded in a gas attack, I could be, just so afraid and just got my mind convinced I'm never going to see again and just be completely afraid of that. I'm not in any way shaming anybody going through that, because there were a lot of people that had these types of symptoms coming out of World War I on both sides of the war. A lot of people. And then their eyesight later comes back. Not maybe most or huge numbers, but there's enough recorded cases. And with enough sort of testing of flashing a bright light or other sorts of things, so in a surprise situation, that I'm not saying faking it. That's different. I'm not talking about faking it. I'm talking about sort of seeing, but sort of it's sort of like some people that adults, but maybe a little bit more children, go through a traumatic experience and stop talking. It's not because their brain really can't talk. It's just because they're sort of shutting out the world. And they really can sort of talk or make noises with their mouths. But, and yeah, I'm sort of talking out of my ass here because I really don't know. But, this sort of that they sort of decided not to talk is something subconscious, but they still sort of kind of know that they can, but they just decided, I'm not talking to anybody. I really think some of these hysterical blindness is an actual blindness in that you could, flash a bright light or do something sort of surprising that if they could even sort of kind of see and just sort of not deciding to react to the world, they'd still flinch. But some of the stuff that really seems like their eyes truly aren't working, but it's their brain that has shut down the inputs from it for some, either not that the inputs are bad, either the physical eye parts or the nerve connections to the brain are bad. None of that is damaged necessarily. As I say, early element was sort of damaged, but that normally went away because a lot of people, got that they were temporarily blind for an hour, for a day, for a week, or whatever, just because of the chemicals, made their eyes sort of swell up and can't really see and things don't work right. As a physical thing. But these other things is that the brain maybe just because the brain can sort of turn things on and off in sort of weird ways. So I really think it was sort of, if we call it hysterical, or I'm calling it hysterical, you know, so it's a PTSD situation, obviously, but it's so traumatic with the eyes that shut down the inputs from it. And I really think that that happened, and that could be an element to some of this stuff. I don't know. Okay, long-range submarine class, but it seems that we also have something else going on. Artillery carriage designs, I think, is what is this. Yeah, stop that. Okay. So that's grayed out. So now we can do a bunch more research. Most of that's 39. 38. So, well, let's check down here. Yeah, we're doing all we can there. That's doing that. I don't want to neglect this here. So, cruiser crew training and destroyer crew training. Let's do those two. We want a navy. We want a navy that functions. Just not going to be a big navy, because I'd rather build other things, but we do want a navy for when it counts and when we need it. I consider myself knowledgeable on Hitler. I don't consider myself an expert on Hitler. Knowledgeable, yes. Expert, no. Fighter bomber prototypes. Okay, which of course will be grayed out, but do we have any other... I know, but that only is only going to help if we're going to do heavy bombers, and I don't know that we're going to do heavy bombers, so I'm sort of ignoring that. Let's come over here and do wing aerodynamics, 1937 level. And I, you know, as you well know, I'm not a Nazi, I'm anti-Hitler, but Hitler's always fascinated me. Always fascinated me. So, that's why I study him, and that's why I talk about him here. You can be fascinated by things you hate. Mountain infantry activation. Oh, which allows us mountain infantry HQ, special forces, and combined unit training. Okay. Stop this. Well, mountain unit HQ. The main reason I'm doing this early is because delay between attacks. It's less than an hour, so showing up as 0, but it's like, I don't know, half an hour, or 0.5 an hour, or 0.3 of an hour. I don't know right offhand, but. And it may be different for different ones of those, but it reduces that down. So that gets that down. We'll get a headquarters or two. That's fine. That's the big reason why we do this. Yeah. Especially once I saw that Madrid was cut off. That means these guys aren't getting supplies properly, so they're going to die. It would be actually better for them to have the capital leave Madrid and go to Barcelona or something. They'd probably survive longer. Well, no, they'll survive longer as they get to hold out super long here, but survive longer as an actual fighting country would work better. Okay. Anti-air ammunition advance. Well, that's quadruple A. That. Okay, so that is... isn't that one of these? Or... here. We want to stop that. Looking for that. Okay, which allows us to upgrade here. So we will do this unless 38. So we'll wait for 38 to do that. Okay, so we've got that going. Let's look. I think it's here for the mountain unit training. Yes, we want to do that. Start research. And we can also do the Special Forces Combined Arms too shortly. Okay, a bunch of things. Motorized HQs finally come through. Stop that if it... Yep. We'll be back there sometime. 1,000 kilogram bomb, however much that weighs. Well, let's come down here and do Special Forces Unit Combined Arms. And we still have one more. So, all much later. I know it's really early 37. We're doing really well with things. Let's come and start looking at pushing some of these guys early and quick here. Yeah. Well, we'll start with let's start with this because it takes the longest. We'll get that started. Rare materials production. Maybe we should also have done that or done that instead. I don't know, but we'll see. Okay, reorganize the war ministry. I think we're still at the 50-50. Yeah, that's if it goes bad, that's the least worst for us. Air bases for West Germany, yes. Cost us 2,200 supplies. Yes, we've got enough. Great. And what? Okay, HQ level 1 motorization. Yay. We need this. Some manpower supplies. Great. Remote HQ right there. Yay. Okay, not a lot, but that's good. Now we are producing. Well, let's click these. Click this. And because we're up into 37,000, we need to produce. Let's sell more supplies. I do want to build up this more. Buying too much oil and such. Oh no, that's impossible. Any of this possible? No. Okay, we're overselling supplies to them, I guess. Soviet Union, do they dislike us still too much? Yeah. That'll change after a while. Yugoslavia, they've got money. Let's offer a trade agreement. How much money do they have? 5, okay. And they need 24. Okay, that should do it without putting them into the hole. Romania, oh, they've got lots of money and need a little bit of supplies. Let's see if we can sell them 3. Don't want to overdo it. I'd rather keep it going for a long time than bust through a lot fast. Ireland, you've got some money you barely need some supplies. Can we sell you too? Yeah. Czechoslovakia, oh, you don't have enough money. Argentina, oh, you've got money and you could use some supplies. See if we can sell you 4 supplies. Well, don't want to overdo that. 5 supplies. Okay, let's look at our production thing to see. We're importing a bunch of oil. Who do we want to stop importing oil from? Mexico. How much we're doing there? Okay, yeah, so I want more money, so we're gonna stop bringing in oil from Mexico. How much over? Okay, we got 20 over. That's good, but I want more money to build up. Okay, we'll let that go for the moment. Hopefully we'll get all those trades. That'll help us with some more money. Italy, we give them fuel for money. Yes, that's what we want to do. We want to build that oil up, or that money up. We've got plenty of fuel for now. Yes, I qualified it for now. We may need more later. Single engine aircraft armament research. Yes, grayed out. And the Yorktown is launched. Okay. Yeah, we want to get these twin engine fighter prototypes. Oh, that's also gone up to 38. We want to stop that now. I didn't notice that happening somehow. Okay, so we want to do that because I want to be able to build those or whatever. But we do want to come up here and start pushing industrial production improvements. We're getting ready for one, and then a bunch more, and then we'll keep going. Once we get through 37, then in 38 I'll start building some other things then. I see horse troops. This is the national or the National Front. The Front National is the you got to try to keep these things. The Front National is the fascist French movement. The National Front is the German National Socialist movement, and I forget what the Italian fascist movement's called. Yeah, the National Front uses a red flag with a white cross, and it's very similar too. They have a sword thingy that's in it from the flag that I've seen. Horst is their Heil, so yeah. So they originally wore a gray uniform with a black tie on the march without the uniform. The uniforms are at some point get banned. All political uniforms banned in Switzerland in 1936. So just recently they banned their uniforms, so they can't be uniform, but they're still out and doing it. So they were the gray shirts until they were banned of being uniformed. Okay, well, we're going to end this episode. It's getting too long, so I want to thank everyone for watching. I want to thank you for liking the videos. I really do appreciate that. And, of course, please post questions, comments, suggestions, ideas. I love hearing from you. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.